Detectives investigating the Madeleine McCann case in Portugal have discovered samples of clothes and bones at the site and sent the samples to the lab for analysis. The search in Praia da Luz was labelled a disappointment after police appeared to leave the site empty-handed last week. However, officers are understood to have found new potential evidence during the extensive search. The samples have now been sent to Germany for testing, amid hopes they could finally reveal the forensic link officers are missing on the case. A source told local media in Germany, several objects have apparently been discovered, which are now being examined in more detail by the police in the laboratory. As Portuguese media report, clothing, debris and bones were found, among other things. The investigators have not officially commented on whether the finds could have anything to do with Madeleine's disappearance, but that is clearly their hope. It is still unclear if these are the same items being tested now. Portuguese and German officers packed up their equipment at 5 p.m. on Thursday after scouring the area between the resort and a cottage where suspect Christian Bruckner lived at the time of Madeleine's disappearance in 2007. The operation deployed 60 police officers alongside heavy machinery, including JCB-style diggers and ground-penetrating radar devices capable of mapping underground terrain to approximately 33 feet deep. Teams cleared shrub from abandoned villas and derelict farmhouses across 20 plots of private land in the Atalaya region, less than a mile from Bruckner's former residence. In October last year, he was cleared by a German court of unrelated sexual offences alleged to have taken place in Portugal between 2000 and 2017. British officers have not been present at the latest searches, the Metropolitan Police said. Madeleine's parents have not commented during the active police investigation, staff at the Find Madeleine campaign said. On the 18th anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance, Kate and Jerry McCann released a statement of sadness. The parents wrote, "No matter how near or far she is, she continues to be right here with us every day," alongside a picture of Madeleine. GB News' Charlie Peters travelled to Praia da Luz in Portugal to report on the police's search for new evidence.
Well, good evening, Patrick. You join me in Praia da Luz. This is the resort town where Madeleine McCann went missing 18 years ago. But a few miles to the east earlier today, we were watching as German and Portuguese authorities were conducting that second day of searches. They did deploy an excavator, a JCB digger, and also a geoscanner to assess the ground, looking around those dilapidated buildings where the prime suspect, Christian Bruckner, is said to have a connection and where potentially that key forensic evidence could be to finally link him, their prime suspect, to the disappearance and murder of Madeleine McCann. But it was as we were leaving that search area in Italia, a couple miles away from here, that we spoke to a man who came up to us and he wanted to speak to GB News, called Ken Ralphs, who was saying that the German and Portuguese authorities were in completely the wrong area because he had met with that suspect, Christian Bruckner, and a potential alleged accomplice 1 week before Maddie went missing. Here's what he said to us earlier today.
He introduced me to Christian, told me it was his best friend, and we invited him, come and have a drink with me and his accomplice, because I was friendly with his accomplice, who we took food to help him and his children. And then he started to cry and confess that he was going to get involved with Bruckner to take a child from Praia da Luz, which I just thought was, crazy to hear that. And he told me he'd done all the planning, Christian knew what he was doing, and I just said, you want to stay away from these people. Stay the hell out. And he cried that he needed the money to get out of this country with his children and his family, and that's why he was getting involved with Bruckner to steal a child. So Bruckner was coming out with his cronies, and they was going to stay at a property and a house in a speech. Now that property is the last place where Bruckner stayed, because the person who owned the house went back to Germany, so he was left on his own there with the accomplice who I was camping with. And the bottom line is that's where they need to be searching. For over 18 years, I've pressed the police, I've told them, and all they can do is blame one another for not passing this information on. So that's why I've turned up today, because I am sick to death of it going in one ear and out the other. I'm sick to death of the Portuguese saying the English have not sent us any information, and I'm sick to death of Scotland Yard lying to me.
Now, Ken Ralphs actually became quite emotional as he shared that compelling testimony of his interaction with Christian Bruckner and this alleged accomplice from the week before Madeleine McCann went missing. One of the questions I asked him was, well, why didn't you report what you were told at the time? And he said, well, Algarve in 2007, southern Portugal was full of drifters like Christian Bruckner and many others who said wild things when they were drunk, when they were potentially a bit emotional, potentially under the influence. And he said that in this area, so much crime is reported that to report a pre-crime just wouldn't be worthwhile. But it was an emotional interview, very compelling testimony, especially with recent revelations that have come out about this lone German suspect in this case. And questions to ask for the police here, both in Germany, in Portugal, but also the Met, who did not respond to our request for comment on this issue.
Well, that is all absolutely fascinating. I mean, I was glued to that there, Charlie. The idea that a bloke has just walked up and said he wants to talk, he's sick and tired of not being listened to about this. He says that the last place, that the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, the whole reason why you're there now, the whole reason why German police are there and the world's press are there, that guy last stayed at a particular property, which is not that property, and he spoke to an alleged accomplice, really. So you've been to the Metropolitan Police, who and other police forces continue to sink, I think, vast sums of money into the continued search for Maddie. And what, they've not got back to you about it?
Well, they've acknowledged the concerns raised, but they didn't have anything to say. And as you say, the Operation Grange, the operation they have to look into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, did receive an extra £108,000 last month. It has received millions of pounds since the operation launched. There were some questions as to why the Met weren't present for this renewed set of searches, the first in over 2 years. But it is a German-led operation. We're also being told yesterday that there wasn't that much interaction between the Portuguese and the German authorities. The question still remains, Patrick, is this an intelligence-led operation? Or is it, as you said before, when you referred to the fact that Christian Bruckner is set to be released in September, a sort of last roll of the dice, a do-or-die desperate attempt to grab some forensic evidence? Because the area they're searching, when we were walking around it today for the best part of 12 hours, it's 21 separate plots of land, and we saw that excavator, the JCB digger, being used quite liberally all over that shrubland, and the geo-scanner being deployed in various different houses. Well, they'll be closing down on Friday, and I suppose we're all just hoping to find out what they might have discovered.
Yeah, look, Charlie, thank you very, very much. Charlie Peters there, who's over in Portugal for us and will be, I imagine, until this particular round of searches wraps up. Charlie Peters, thank you. That is just really quite surprising testimony from a bloke. You would have thought that if he's been telling police, I mean, look, it might come to nothing, you don't know, do you? But